episode of African News Review. I am your host, Adesoji Iginla, and with me, my esteemed guests as usual. I'll start with the ladies. We've got Aya Fubara and Eneli Esquire, co-host Women and Resistance, also host of Rethinking Freedom. Please go to her channel, subscribe, and do all the good stuff. Welcome, sister.
Thank you. Greetings.
And the legend needs no introduction. He is he's a man around town. He is a global traveler. He is none other than Comrade Milton Allimadi, host of Black Star News and author of a book that I would say inspired this program, which is Manufacturing Hate. I won't say you go out there and get it because you might just be fighting against the capitalist forces. But
Yes.
welcome, Brother Milton.
Asante Sana. Thank you, comrade.
Yes, this week has been very interesting in the news. So, as usual, I would ask you to start the news from where you are, sister.
Well, what is sweeping across the state of Texas is the closing of public schools.
Oh,
Yeah. So I had to laugh because as soon as I was going to say his name, all I could hear was Hot Wheels. um, um, Governor Abbott, who has been governor for over 12 years now, I think, they actually primaried every Republican who was in opposition to the voucher bill that he wanted to pass, which would basically direct public funds to privately run institutions, K through 12 institutions. And the multi-billionaires in the state put some serious money behind primarying even representatives who had been with the Republican Party for decades plus. So in my area, my district, actually, Hugh Shine had been a Republican representative for 20 some years, diehard Republican, voted with them on everything except he did not agree with moving taxpayer dollars to private institutions. And they dragged him for filth and put in this woman who's a book banner and all of that stuff. So anyway, long story short, the bill has passed. The Democrats did fight valiantly, but they simply don't have the votes. Once they primaried all of the opposition within the Republican Party and put in only people who would vote with the governor, he got his bill passed. And now, as a consequence, added to the fact that the state of Texas has been underfunding public schools anyway for a while. But now that you have billions of dollars moving, $1 billion moving out of the public school system into the private school system, where they are not regulated, they do not have to provide for children with special needs. There are a lot of rules that they simply don't have to abide by, that the public school system has to abide by. They don't have to provide transportation, all those kind of things. The public school districts have to make their budgets work. And so across the state, school districts are announcing school closures, announcing how they're going to be cutting services, announcing, just cost-cutting measures. And as we do that, of course, we're also building private prisons. So it's going to be interesting. This country that wants to ensure that people don't get educated, and in particular, people of color don't get educated. People who are economically disadvantaged don't get educated, because when people don't have the education, don't have the skills they need, they're easier to control, easier to manipulate their lives, easier for the oligarchs to basically recreate a feudal system where people are just existing. So yeah, that's what's happening in my neck of the woods.
Okay, the good comrade.
Yeah, so to me, I found the most interesting, well, domestic, but international as well. The Trump Middle East peace plan. And I think it's interesting that it could actually result into something significant. Hamas has accepted it. Hamas has a problem with the Israeli timeline for withdrawal of Israeli troops. But I think if Egypt and Turkey and Qatar goes in there with their armed forces because they're saying the peacekeepers are going to come from those countries, I think that's a victory right there. They should accept it and then dare Israel to attack soldiers from Egypt, from Turkey, and Qatar. So this could be the beginning of something significant. If these Arab peacekeeping soldiers are indeed deployed, then it would resolve the issue of the timeline, because obviously Israel is not going to risk confrontation with these countries. Qatar, for example.
One of which is a NATO member, Turkey.
And Qatar, for example, this is where Trump gets a lot of his business money from, And you saw recently when they did that, when they dropped the bombs there, the U.S. in this case, sided with Qatar, and said that does not advance any of the interest of Israel or of Qatar. So I think this could actually turn into something very interesting. Let's keep our eyes on that.
So I have a question for you, comrade. Does that include disarmament with Israel? Like, are they still going to be sending the bombs?
If I'm Hamas, I would, because they want Hamas to disarm, right? So Hamas said they want to surrender their weapons to Egypt. And if Egypt accepts that, I would do it. Because quite frankly,
but the U.S. will still be giving weapons to Israel to still...
Oh, that's never going to stop. That's never going to stop.
Okay, so that's not even on the table.
That's not on the table. That's not going to stop. That's something that American voters and, many, forget the administration, many Americans, even Republicans, who have any human compassion, have their attitude toward Israel has changed, because we've never witnessed this kind of live stream genocide, including of children. And that is a public relations disaster. I remember even Trump said that a couple of months ago, that this is a public relations disaster. If Trump, of all the people, is saying this is a public relations disaster to Israel, yes, it definitely is. The country has really extended the level of global hostility toward the Netanyahu government. And you saw it displayed in the United Nations. You see it displayed on the kind of protests you're seeing in countries like Italy now, and this is just going to keep growing. I think Netanyahu, I don't know what was on his mind, really. I think partly he's not a stupid man. So I think he was so overconsumed by the desire not to prolong his own domestic criminal case, that he was willing to exterminate as many Palestinians as possible. Because so long as that is on the headline, then there's going to be less focus on his own domestic criminal case, you see? It's amazing. There's no way could he have believed that you can kill 100,000 Palestinians and not have any consequences down the line. Then the whole world would just be, okay, fine. Yeah. We understand. They came in October 7th, they killed 1,200 Israelis. So yeah, we think it's justified to kill 100,000 of them. I don't think so. Even this must have crossed his mind too.
And I know we need to get to our stories, but comrade, how do you then compare that to what Trump is doing in the United States? Because same situation, two criminals, one with 34 felonies.
Mm-hmm.
And he is now terrorizing and openly calling anyone who didn't vote for him in any of the states that did not go his way enemies. They are cutting billions of dollars in taxpayer money that had already been allocated to these states.
Yep.
They are dropping ICE, terrorizing people. So when you say, you know, Netanyahu, there's no way he could have thought that he could do these things and not get away with it. Is Trump not doing the same thing in broad daylight?
Yep. But he doesn't see it that way. When it comes to him, he's in a special category of his own. He does not see his crimes as crimes. He rationalizes anything and everything.
So then that's isn't that what Netanyahu was doing and all the Israelis who were voting and supporting him?
Absolutely, but there's a difference. There's a difference. In the U.S., taxpayers can make a difference in terms of the continued blank support for Israel. So Trump does not depend on anybody. See, he cuts his own checks. He cuts his own check. Now he's willing to damage services by allowing government to be shut, and that's the difference between the two of them. Netanyahu's crimes has to be financed by the United States.
He cuts his own check, the checks he's making from stealing from the American people?
Listen, they're both criminals. I'm just telling you, one is much more powerful than the other.
Yeah, oh no, I hear you.
Yeah.
No, I hear you. I'm just saying that the delusion, the madness is the same. Like the sickness is the same.
Well, speaking of news, wherever you are, one ties into the news sister just shared with regards to the moving of funds from public educational institutions into private institutions. There was a news making the rounds in the Financial Times, which is CVC Group, has bought a 21% stake in the Swiss International School Company that is seeking a merger with companies in the United States. So they're just priming themselves so that they've got enough money to, transfer into private equity. On a more serious note, we have the Home Secretary who, in light of the killing of two Jewish adherents at a synagogue in Manchester, decided that she was going to clamp down on protest in the UK. And she is going to go to Parliament and put forward legislation that means you will not be able to protest on the same thing on a recurrent week, which, going by history here, has been, knocked down before by the courts. And so she's trying to, how can I say it, placate the Zionist lobby here. But we'll see how that pans out.
So Labor is like conservatives light. It's like Democrats, Republican light in this country.
Yes. And the funny thing about this move is the Home Secretary now, Shabana Mahmoud, marched with the Palestinian protest a couple of weeks before she became Home Secretary. So read that into what you may. So for our story today, our first story, actually, we go to the Financial Times, and it's coming from out of Sudan. And it's titled, Trump's envoy Bolu say deal to break Sudan siege imminent. U.S. Africa advisor tells FT that the paramilitary forces will allow aid into El Fasher, where thousands face starvation and death. And the lead says a US-backed agreement to allow aid into Sudan's besieged city of El Fasher. For those who don't know, El Fasher is a city in the western side of Sudan, Darfur, which history will tell you has not been in tune with the capital, Khartoum. So where tens of thousands of people are facing starvation and death will come into effect very, very soon, according to President Donald Trump's Africa envoy. Masad Bulus, the State Department senior advisor on Africa and father-in-law to Trump's daughter, Tiffany, whatever. The Financial Times said U.S. will help from the U.S., United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia, collectively known as the Squad, have secured cooperations from the paramilitary rapid support forces circling the city. The population of El Fasher has been under RSF siege for the past 14 months. And the population of that area is about 20 or 25 million people, the size of a major country in Europe anyway. So question would be, what do we glean from this? Let's start with the sister.
What? No, brother was about to talk. Why are you starting with me?
Well, okay.
Okay, brother. So, okay, comrade, go.
Okay, so this goes back to, I think, what we said. I said at least 2 shows ago that something is going to happen in Sudan.
Yeah.
Because the guy is determined to win the Nobel. And I personally would not be shocked if they give it to him. I mean, they gave the Nobel to Obama, remember, and Obama was notorious for those drone strikes, right? People tend to forget that.
That was before he became a drone striker.
Well, the policy was already outlined. So I wouldn't be shocked. There are 2 contenders, I think, unless there's a surprise. There's the Gaza flotilla, the people who've been trying to deliver food to Gaza. Of course, those are the ones that deserve to get it. But at the same time, I would not be shocked in the world in which we live in if Trump gets the Nobel. Because the Nobel, let's face it, they're political actors as well. And they also fear that there might be consequences
if he doesn't get it.
If he doesn't get the Nobel. It's almost like, remember how Charles Taylor was, if you don't vote for me, I'm going to kill you. And that's how he was elected president in Liberia. So that is why he's going out all the way on Congo first, and now he's going out all the way in Sudan. And this is so ironic that what is being attempted already exceeds anything that the Biden administration attempted. The Biden administration was horrific when it came to dealing with Sudan, when it came to dealing with the Congo. And that is the whole irony. That's why I don't see either as friends of African people, to be honest with you. Both these are parties that are supported by corporations. We witnessed the genocide against the Palestinian people while Biden was, shipping these bunker busting bombs to Netanyahu. So this would be, to me, the ultimate irony if this, fascist Republican, I don't even know if he's a Republican. I think, he just goes with whatever serves his interest. If this fascist militarist president of the United States, resolves the issue in the Sudan that the Democrats hardly even attempted to do. So I wouldn't be shocked if it happens. I don't think he would put his name out there and send, Bulus out there if there was not an indication that it would succeed. And in fact, the people that really matter the most in this conflict are the outsiders who are backing the opposite sides. Egypt and Saudi Arabia support the Sudanese official military.
Yeah.
And United Arab Emirates supports the so-called rapid, whatever it's called, forces. So it seems like these entities have agreed that the food should be shipped. That's number one. To feed people is one thing, but to resolve the crisis itself, that's going to be a whole nother issue to watch.
Sister?
Can you pull up the article again, please?
Sure, will do. 1 second.
And scroll all the way down.
All the way down. Okay. Do it.
Right. Hold on. Yeah.
What? Aid agencies.
Keep going. No, we want to get to the resources.
Okay. Here.
The U.S. aims to secure American investment in infrastructure in DR Congo's huge mineral deposits. it would set out a strategy, Bola said, to ensure that DR Congo's critical mineral sector is developed with the help of investments from US and like-minded companies. Both Kinshasa and Washington are seeking to dilute China's overwhelming dominance in the country's mining sector. It's going to be a strategic agreement. It's not really like individual mining deals. It's an overall cooperation agreement between the two governments. What two governments? Because last time I checked, Sudan didn't really have a functioning government. So what two governments and what cooperative strategic agreement? So let me start at the beginning. First and foremost, for the few people who do listen to this show and growing, I don't think it's beyond. I think it makes sense for us to have a voice in this whole Nobel Prize thing, and to make sure that we are speaking our voice as well. Yes, I understand they are into politics as well and all of that. But you do not give someone a Nobel Prize who is a terrorist in his own country, who is literally snatching children from their parents, separating them, asking no questions before they first brutalize people, who is asking his own, not asking, insisting, demanding that as commander of chief, the troops use his own people for military training. What separates him then from the so-called warring factions in Sudan, who are using their people as pawns? So let me just put that out there first, because I will not be a part of normalizing this absolute crazy human being. And I know that we might get to a point where people who are speaking out against this man are disappeared in the middle of the night. You know, I'm going to die at some point. If I'm going to die, let me die speaking the truth. That's how I feel at this point, because we are here today because somebody was willing to speak the truth and to fight, even if sometimes it cost them their lives. Having said that, whether it's I don't care who is in power in the United States of America, like the comrade had said, this is again, hence having a committee. You already know that you're besieged by the foxes, the jackals, the snakes, all of that. None of them have your interest at heart. You, the hens, are eating your own eggs, because chicken will do that. I know that. I raise chicken, right? Under certain circumstances, they'll start eating their own egg. They will peck at each other and kill each other, actually. So you already have your internal stuff. You don't decide to address that. You invite the jackal, the fox, the snake, and then you're going to get into a cooperative agreement. These people don't care about the 50% of, they said 50 million people who are facing starvation. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever skipped meals for like half the day, 3/4 of the day, and by the evening, you're already having a headache, you're already feeling weak and all of that. We don't even begin to understand what it feels like to be facing starvation. This is multiple days and multiple months of barely getting enough. So on the one hand, I really want to see peace come in some form. I want people to at least be able to feed, right? But on the other hand, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a cancer. In the sense that all of these issues, whether we're talking about Palestine or we're talking about Sudan or Congo, are manufactured by men. And men, you guys are the problem. It's really not women creating a lot of the issues we face across the earth. Y'all need to figure out what your issues are, because you're killing all of us. I mean that sincerely. I don't know what this aggression is. I don't know what it is. But we, of course, women are getting raped in addition to everything else that we're dealing with, that men deal with too. And so for my people and for those of us who believe in prayer, I want to put my confidence, although it's at this point I have no reason to have that confidence, in our people coming together and saying enough of us participating in our own oppression. Enough of us stealing the gold and the wealth of the people to buy weapons to oppress our own people. We don't need to beg for food. But Bulus, first of all, the nepotism here, his daughter's father-in-law. I mean, we're just normalizing all of this stuff. I do hope for my people that, yes, food comes in. But in the long run, I hope for my people that we get back the sense God gave us and that we kick these outsiders out because they never want us at peace. As a matter of fact, they benefit from us fighting each other. And the only reason they now come in is if it's affecting their interests. They don't care if we all die. Then they can actually take it all. So Trump and you keep campaigning for the Nobel Prize just because it irks you that the Black man got it. The fact that Obama was a 2-term president and Obama got the Nobel Prize, now you're going to start copying his walk. Good luck, because that man lives rent-free in your head. But for all of these institutions, if you ever want to have any credibility, you need to look at the decisions you're making. And giving Trump the Nobel Prize would be a huge mistake. But then again, if they want to blow up their own empires, so be it.
Any final thoughts?
All right. So, de Klerk got the Nobel Prize. The ultimate,
yeah. And we've talked about that one too.
The ultimate apartheid chief. So this is 100% political, as I pointed out. So I will not be shocked if Trump gets it, since de Klerk got it, stained it with his bloody hands. Of course, he should not get it, but I won't be surprised if he gets it. The flotilla Gaza float should get it, but they probably won't. They won't get it because giving it to the flotilla Gaza would be making a strong political statement in support of progressive humanity. And I don't think Europeans are ready to do that right now. Not the Nobel Committee, anyway.
Would they give it to?
Sorry.
Would they give it to Francesca Albanese?
No, that's a bit too political. That's too progressive. She's the ultimate progressive who's been denouncing the genocide at the risk of her job, all this time. Yeah. And the big question here is the complete absence and failure of the African continent. That is why the bourgeoisie elite that live, and I remember last week when after we praised what they said at the United Nations, I was very quick to denounce all of them. Yeah. I said I can commend them for saying things, but at the same time, I will support people who want to get rid of all of them. Because now we can't even remember the name of the executive commission chair of the African Union, because the African Union should be at the forefront of resolving these crises. Yeah. So the ultimate affirmation and confirmation of neocolonialism is when you have the chief advisor to a European American fascist president who's taking the lead role in resolving two major crises on the African continent. If anybody wanted any proof that Africa collectively, these are not independent countries, this is the best affirmation and confirmation. And that's the final say I'll have on this particular topic.
Well, to be fair to the Africans, a number of bodies have been trying to mediate, not least the African religious and civil society networks led by women, but they've been largely undermined by what the sister said. The testosterone in the room has largely undermined those efforts. So we have to give them the flowers, as it were. But that said, what I find instructive about the Sudanese crisis is, again, when European commentators come in and say, "Oh well, colonialism has been good for Africa," This is a classic example of the legacy of colonialism. Sudan, a country the size of Western Europe, is basically fracturing, and because it was not supposed to be together in the first place. But that is a matter for another day. We go to our next story, which is from the BBC, and it's titled AGOA. It's titled AGOA, Thousands of Workers in Limbo as US-Africa Trade Deal Set to Expire. And it reads, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, embedding in legislation a landmark trade agreement that has for 25 years given some African goods duty-free access to the US market, expires on Tuesday. However, the policy is at odds with the Trump administration record of imposing tariffs. Envoys from the various African countries have gone to the US to try and negotiate an extension. Your thoughts?
Again, language. It's at odds with the Trump administration's, what did they say, of imposing tariffs?
Tariffs, yeah.
How about we call it what it is? The Trump's administration tactic of bullying the rest of the world with its nuclear power and its trade policies. It's a bullying. It's not just tariffs. Different countries have tariffs. No, this is a concerted effort to bring every other nation to their knees, not to the United States of America, but to Trump personally. But you're using the weight of your position as the president of the United States of America. So again, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, right?
Yes.
Was formed how long ago?
25 years ago.
25 years ago. And in that whole time, our leaders, instead of thinking long-term, decided it was okay to just stay in this place of infancy and dependency. Not to figure out how to open markets amongst themselves or with any other part of the world, but to basically, I'm going to be crass, to just stay on your mama's breast because US is your mama, right?
Yep.
The United States of America, quite frankly, does not owe Africa anything in that sense besides reparations. But I'm just saying in terms of these deals that we're making. And so even if you got it and you've now been functioning, how about any business? You think about how to expand. You think about how to diversify. You do not put all your eggs in one basket. And so I will again deplore, this man and the fact that he does not care about humanity and all his decisions are about just how to exert the most power against people for his own good, just for his own aggrandizement. Having said that, I also have to say to my people, why are we expecting the West to save us? That is never their intent. Never, ever, ever their intent. So this is a time, even as they're hoping to buy another year or whatever from the Trump administration, start thinking about how you diversify. Do we not have 1.4 billion people on the face of Africa who buy clothes?
Yep, that's the case.
So that is what I would say on this one, and that it's a lesson for any of us, even in our own individual businesses, is to make sure that you are not putting all your eggs in one basket and that you are not forgetting the history of the people that you're working with. And putting yourself in a very vulnerable situation for no good reason. Having said that, just reading that story and reading what the young woman is saying. But at the end, if you go scroll all the way down to the quote that she gives there, if you don't mind, on that story, our personal
let me share
development and how we understand history and where we are in history is really important. So I know she's just trying to put food on the table. She's taking care of her family all the way. Go all the way to the end of that article, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
She has just one request for the Kenyan and US governments: give young people more opportunities. And I would say that request should be for the Kenya and the African governments. We have the youngest
population
group of people across the world. Give our young people an opportunity. That's all they're asking for. We have very enterprising young people. Give them an opportunity. But I don't look to the US for anything except if we're getting our reparations.
Okay. Comrade?
Right. So this goes back to the whole issue that the sister is touching on in terms of dependency. Yeah. And that's why, you know, the biggest enemies of African people have been the elite bourgeois class that has been governing since so-called end of colonial rule. It's immeasurable, the betrayals, you know, the suffering, the disaster that they've invited upon the African people by their lack of vision and foresight and commitment and willing to sacrifice and to be brave. So Sankara, only in power for 4 years in Burkina Faso, Sankara refused foreign aid. He rejected it. He rejected it. He said, I don't want it. If you want to give us tractors so we can increase our output of agriculture, we'll take it. And they got that. And they tripled our food production and became self-sufficient because he's a forward-thinking person, right? So we have the biggest problem we have on the continent is that the mind is still colonized. Our leaders have not been able to decolonize our mind. And that's what Sankara was trying to do because, you know, and so Sankara's been long dead. He's gone, killed in 1987. And yet the seeds that he planted have germinated. And that's why Burkina Faso is a different country from all those other African countries today, because of the example that Sankara set. Amilcar Cabral, who was assassinated by the Portuguese secret police, did not live to see Guinea-Bissau win its independence, which it did about a year later after they killed him. But at a very famous meeting, tricontinental meeting in Cuba in 1966, Castro and Che Guevara were so impressed. They said, we're going to give you weapons to fight against the Portuguese. We're going to give you soldiers as well. He refused. He said, no.
No soldiers. Yeah.
How many people would do that?
Yeah.
I don't want your soldiers because I want my people
to fight for
to learn how to fight for themselves and uplift their consciousness. So from 66, with Cuban soldiers, it might have taken only 2 years, right? Yeah. As Cuba proved in 1987 when it defeated South Africa. So it took from 1966 all the way to 1973 before they defeated the Portuguese. But the people that defeated the Portuguese were the people of Guinea-Bissau, completely transformed. Mohamed Babu Abdurrahman, who was Nyerere's Minister of Economic Planning before they fell out, because the West put a lot of pressure on Nyerere. They said this guy's too radical, communist, pro-China, and all that stuff. Babu in the 1960s was saying what Sankara was saying in the 1980s. Let's reject foreign aid. It's going to backfire in the long run. And this is another form of foreign aid. They're saying, okay, it's different because it's opening up market, but it's still dictated on the preference of the United States. Yeah, that's a great book by Babu. So now that preference is being ended unilaterally. We're talking about in Kenya alone, they're saying over 6,000 jobs. No, wait a minute, 66,000 jobs. Just think about that.
Yeah.
66,000 jobs. And, you know, we have large families and extended families. So we are talking at least 10 to 20 dependents on these. It's going to be.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. It's going to be a calamity for many of these countries. And it goes back at the end of the day to Mr. Leader. what did you get us involved in? Unfortunately, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you also do a favor? There was a book written in 1972 that talked about the coming
Wait,
of this problem.
you're echoing.
Can you hear me? Can you
Not
hear me?
Sister,
clearly. Not clearly.
Yeah, can you hear him echoing too?
Okay. You're
Am I
clearer
clear
now. Yes.
Okay. So there was a book written in 1972, which was subsequently rehashed in 1981, which speaks to this very problem of dependency.
Absolutely.
And we've had the
Walter Rodney, right?
widow on here. Walter Rodney, yes. Could you just give us a synopsis of what this book talked about with regards to this particular problem, about our dependency on consuming Western goods to the detriment of our own industrialization?
Well, I think the easiest way to understand Rodney's argument is that there's an inverse correlation between the wealth and development in the industrialized countries and the retrogression in African countries, you know?
Yeah.
And the colonial model, not only did they insist that you be cheap laborers, but you produce raw materials. We take it to Europe as if they could not build factories in Africa, right?
Yeah.
We take it to Europe, put it in our factories, and then bring it back as, you know, quote, manufactured like this, and then force you to buy it. It's the ideal dream of any corporation in the world, right? To have an exclusive supply of cheap labor, exclusive supply of consumers of what you produce. And that's unfortunately still what prevails in Africa today.
Yeah. Because I think people should actually read this book. And,
oh, definitely.
Yeah, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, Walter Rodney, is a must read for people to understand the geopolitical setup, especially when it comes to trade and what have you. And stories like this will continue to make the rounds because the infrastructure in place will not be dismantled, hopefully should be, but will not be dismantled by leaders who are beholden to the metropole, as it's called.
No, absolutely. Look, you have the guy who was a managing director of the IMF, Sankara, running next week, I think, right? Again, at the age of 83 in Ivory Coast.
Yeah.
And then later the same month, you have Paul Biya, 94. You know, he's, as we said last week, he's actually a French man in African skin, running again to extend his rule on behalf of French interests. You know, we have to become much more aggressive against these misrulers. They're killing our children. That's what they're doing.
Well, so with that, go to the next story. It's from Guinea, and it's from Ghana, rather. It's from the Radio France International, and it's that U.S. backtracks on Ghana's visa curbs as the country becomes deportation hub. It says the United Nations has reversed its visa restriction on Ghana as the West African nation emerges as a key deportation hub in President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown, while Accra maintains it has received nothing in return for taking in deportees. One political scientist told RFI an agreement to take in more West African deportees was the only plausible explanation. And it goes further. That's the president who at the UN was talking massively. So Accra has insisted it has received nothing in return for taking in the deportees, though Mahama acknowledged that the deal was struck as relations were tightening, with Washington imposing tariffs as well as visa restrictions in recent months. The US visa restrictions imposed on Ghana has been reversed. Ghana's Foreign Minister Samuel Okuto Ablava said in a post on X. He said the good news was delivered by US officials on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. In June, the United States announced restriction on most visas from Cameroon, Ethiopia, Ghana, and Nigeria, restricting them to 3 months on a single visa. Ghana can now be eligible for 5-year multiple entry visas and other enhanced consular privileges, Ablava said. Okay, interesting. Who wants to go first?
Go ahead, sister. I think I took the last two.
You know, so again, we've discussed this issue before. Listening to the language, he says Accra says they've received nothing. Well, you know, Accra doesn't have to receive anything. Our leaders always figure out a way to come into office with one level of wealth, and by the time they leave, they are at a whole different, stratosphere. So I don't know who received what, but it is very interesting that he tried to couch this as he's being a Pan-Africanist. He was stepping in to assist with the Africans who were being deported. And now we are hearing that some of these people who were just taken across the border into Togo and abandoned. We're hearing people were returned to countries where they had fled from, and that's why they had filed for asylum. So the man is talking out of not both sides, like all sides of his mouth at the same time. Can't believe anything he says, consequently. And yes, the fact that you become a dumping ground or a conduit for taking care of Trump's problem, and then now your people have their visas, their visa status, reversed so that they can travel as they will to continue this dependence we have on America. Because you can travel to other places, and there are many beautiful places in Africa that you can travel to. Now, I know there are students who want to get visas to come and study here and so on and so forth. I get it. I'm not, I understand that. But I will also say that, again, the betrayal of African elites when it comes to Africa as a whole it's just beyond mind-boggling. It's saddening, it's maddening all at the same time. He's clearly playing games with not just his country, but with the lives and the sovereignty of other African nations as well, right? And possibly creating issues in other countries, because now you've gone and dumped those people in Togo. What is Togo supposed to do when it goes from 5 people to 20 people to 100 people to whatever number of people you decide to accept from America and then just dump somewhere else? But again, so let me say this, because I was thinking about it on the other topic with this Nobel Prize. This idea that if you don't do what Donald Trump wants you to do, then there are reprisals. So go ahead and, be conciliatory so that there are no reprisals. What in history has shown us that works?
Exactly.
When has that ever worked with any bully, where if you give them your lunch on Monday, they're going to let you eat your lunch on Tuesday and Wednesday? It never works. They take your lunch Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They tell you what kind of lunch you better bring. And Saturday, they're coming to your house and taking whatever else. So this idea of let's appease him so that it controls him, that we're lying to ourselves. We're simply acting out of cowardice. And my whole thing is, can we believe in ourselves for enough of us to stand up and say, this is madness, and we're not going to gloss over it and act like it's normal? And so this president of Ghana, shame on him, and coming out to the UN and waxing eloquent and all of this, and you're a damn coward. That's what you are, and you're betraying your people.
Comrade?
All right. So, I think we discussed this when the issue first came out, and I said there should be an African Union position on this.
Yeah.
But nobody should hold their breath, because that's not going to happen. No, it just won't happen. There's a lack, because it means you're taking a position against Trump, and I haven't seen any one of them take a position yet, except maybe the alliance or Sahel states, perhaps. Otherwise, nobody else has taken a position. Ramaphosa was brought to the White House. They made sure they had these right-wing, racist Europeans there, lambasting him for genocide against Afrikaners, slapped him around, sent him back home. But luckily for him, the African ancestors intervened a little bit and caused this friction between Elon Musk and Trump. So that decreased the pressure that was really escalating dramatically against South Africa.
Yeah.
I think that gave him the energy to come here and take a very strong position on Gaza. But that has to be a daily practice with every African leader. Now, in terms of the dumping of these individuals into Togo, I think this is a situation where their lawyers should be able to get them some money. You can't just pick human beings.
Yeah, the lawyers have filed.
Okay, they need to get compensation. You can't just dump human beings somewhere in the world without family, without source of income, without social benefits. That's outrageous. I think that's something that could get good media coverage in terms of them getting some money straight.
But these are not people. There are no humans involved here.
Yep.
Absolutely, but this is a case that can attract some attention. So you have to jump on that opportunity and give it a try, because then it raises the other question: why should these governments, and maybe not in the case of Ghana, we don't know. Maybe they got some direct funding as well. But in the case of Rwanda, when Rwanda was dealing with the British, something similar to that, why should the money be going to the government? These are the individuals who are the victims. You are denying them the opportunity cost of what they might have been able to accomplish had the normal process allowed them to get asylum, whether to get asylum, whether it was in the United States or whether it's in Britain or some other European country, right? So they should be compensated for that. They're much more deserving of compensation than the governments of the countries where you're dumping them to,
So I was minded to also, go down the rabbit hole of history, because Ghana said, or rather, the first elected president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, said, the freedom of Ghana, the independence of Ghana, is meaningless without the independence of every other country. But then he wrote a book titled Neocolonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism. And one of the most powerful quotes in there is, he says, the essence of neocolonialism is that the state, which is subject to it is, in theory, independent. In reality, its economic system, which we have already seen with the Agricultural Gold Act, and its political policy, Ghana, is directed from the outside. That is a man who occupied the seat you are now sitting in, who had already told you what is to come, and you go ahead and do this.
Yeah.
He beggars belief. The mind boggles. The mind just boggles. And
not to me, they're doing exactly what I expect from neo-colonial leaders. They no longer surprise me,
Wow. Well,
so what I would say is, as we are reviewing these stories, that it's imperative that we as individuals also take a look at in our own lives where we are, how we may be silent or not taking a stance against the injustices that we see. Like, it doesn't have to be on a global stage to show up and have some courage about you.
Mm.
And if you can't show up in the little things, you would never be able to show up in the big things.
Yep.
And so for all of us watching, for those of us talking, the question is, how are we also showing up and resisting, mounting a resistance to this fascism, to this authoritarianism? How are we showing up in love to humanity, as opposed to, hey, I'm just taking care of mine and to hell with everybody else? How are we not embracing our privileges? Because anyone who's watching this right now is more privileged than a good percentage of the world. If you got a device, if you can afford data, and so on and so forth, what are we doing with our privilege so that we are not also disconnected from the masses of people and acting like these elites are? Because possibly if you talk with them, and I have talked with some of them, they see nothing wrong with what they're doing. Don't even occur to them, because of how they've been brainwashed and socialized, how we all have been brainwashed and socialized, including this idea of individualism and personal, excellence, and so on and so forth. And so other people deserve what they get. So just wanted to put that out there. So we are not just bystanders watching and discussing these events. What we do in our daily lives impacts what happens in the world.
Okay, a quick one, final story. I'm sure the comrade will be leaving on top of the hour, but I just want to get his take on this. Sure. It's, what's his name? Again, that book I put up earlier, Neocolonialism, Last Stage of Imperialism, speaks well to this issue here. Axis Minerals, the story comes from Radio France International. Axis Minerals, a casualty of Guinea's mining purge, demands $1 billion in damages. An Indian businessman is seeking $1 billion in damages from Guinea after losing his mining license for bauxite deposit in the buffer region. Bagua Oxval has requested arbitration before a New York court denouncing Conakry's treatment of foreign investment. That's the man himself. And he says, he described it as a shock when on 14th of May, he discovered that Axis Minerals' mining license had been revoked. The Guinea subsidiary of Oxval Global Group had been operated in the country since 2020, following years of exploration and investment in the project. He goes into how he heard the story, but the key part for me is the cleanup of the National Mining Register is justified according to General Amara Kamara, spokesman for the Guinea presidency, on the grounds that most of the permits were in breach of the mining code. So in light of, quote unquote, foreign capital coming into Africa, dictating what should be your labor laws, your tax laws, and what have you, what do you have to say about this story?
All right. So, the timeline, to me, I think provides the answer. So the company, it's had a presence in the country since 2013.
Yeah.
It's been operating these particular mines since 2020.
Yeah.
The current ruler, the military guy, General Doumbouya, came there in 2021. This is now 2025. So it's 4 years later that he's bringing up this issue. So it took him 4 years to find out that these contracts were violating mining codes. That cannot be the correct answer. Whether you have the most incompetent people in your ministries, it will not take them 4 years. But what's happened is that since that time, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso have been demanding more for their minerals. Okay. And the guy, I forget his name, the Indian guy, said we were never, it was overnight. There was no negotiation. We were never told to build plants within the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who is talking about building plants within the country right now? Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali.
Yeah.
So Guinea just wants to get into the act now. Guinea wants to do what the Alliance of Sahel states are doing, and it's the correct thing. Now, if you do have a valid contract, that's going to be an issue. Okay. They can show that the contract perhaps was, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know, that it was so egregious and outrageous, then that could be something that a court might have to consider. This contract cannot be legit because it's so blatantly egregious that there must have been something shady going on the one hand. On the other hand, Guinea should also remember that this guy also has connections outside the country, because sadly, Guinea has taken $867 million from the World Bank. And and when it comes to choosing side, you know who the World Bank is going to side with.
Correct.
So those are the points I wanted to make on this issue.
Okay, sister.
I guess it was John Henry Clark that said that, Africa has no friends. I'm paraphrasing something along those lines.
That's right.
Yep.
Yes, he did. He said that. Yes, he did.
So my dear brown brother also is coming to cannibalize Africa. Yep. And African leaders are signing off on it. Yes. So yes, let's take a look at what those contracts are and whether they really can be quote unquote legally invalidated. I personally feel that when you look at most of the contracts African leaders have signed, that they can all be invalidated.
Yeah, they should be.
You're leasing 1 million acres for what? $1 for 100 years. I mean, like under where does that make sense? Except in Africa, for you to have these kind of contracts in place. Certainly, if you are overseeing or you own other mines in other places where you have certain structures, infrastructure in place and safety measures, but all of a sudden when you're here when you're here in Guinea or on the continent of Africa, you don't have to have any safety measures in place and so on and so forth. There are different things that we can look at to say, yes, this has to go. But, comrade, you're exactly right about what is possibly driving this right now. And I say, great. And let's get more African countries on board. If it took Burkina Faso and Mali and Niger to get the rest of us to wake up and say, hey, we have a strategic
interest
we have
that you
some
want
here. Like we can negotiate differently and we can negotiate and keep more of our own resources. If that's what it's taking to wake us up, let's go for it. But the sheer entitlement, this article, I was sleeping in my home. I wish they went ahead to describe the home to us. Right. I was awoken at 2 a.m. and they said, my mind's there. My you own what? Like the idea, first of all, that our resources don't belong to us, but one human being or one corporation can just
That's a very good observation.
This whole concept of ownership, my mind.
No. That's an excellent observation. He was waking up at 10 a.m. at 2 a.m. He told his daughter, who is the managing director, call the country immediately, find out what's going on. The entitlement is a very Eurocentric European entitlement.
Correct.
How dare these savages, these barbarians, these whatever, who the hell do they think they're messing with? Yeah, and now let me call the IMF and call the World Bank and call and call Trump, maybe give him a couple $1 million and he's going to put his foot on the scale in my favor.
Absolutely.
So, this is what it takes for a wake-up call from Africa. But let me say this to us all, as individuals, wherever we are in the world, and for African leaders. You don't have a freedom that you're not willing to fight for. You can't negotiate it on paper. We've seen that didn't work with independence. And so the idea that we are going to be sovereign without risking anything is a joke. So if the idea is, IMF is now going to come down on us, you know what? Do like I do a lot of debt claim suits in America. And people get to a point where they're like, I don't have the money. I'm not paying. What are you going to do to me? Like, so what are they going to do? Come and take the whole continent?
Right.
Again, like we're talking about Burkina Faso and what this young man Thomas Sankara did, that we need to go back to. If all the African leaders, CARICOM, all of them came together and just said, you know what, we're not paying another dime.
You're right. I agree.
So the money that we're not paying, first of all, be strategic, because the most dangerous time for a person to leave a domestic violence situation is when they leave. That's the most dangerous time for them, because that's when the person who's been in power over them goes crazy. So you got to plan your exits very carefully. So they have to be very careful in how they withdraw their money from the Swiss banks and wherever else it is, how they start to build up food supplies and all of that. But they come together and they say, we're not giving you guys not another penny.
Yep.
Yes. Speaking of choosing sides or lack thereof of choosing of any side, I mean, Sankara, was it? It was Nkrumah who said, we neither faced east nor west, we faced forward. So, which leads to this African proverb, which is, when the lion and the leopard are fighting, you do not see the leopard, you do not see the antelope cheering for either side, because it knows once they finish with each other, your lunch. So we have to be strategic, just like you said. We have to understand what our role is and how to survive in this constant cycle of violence, because that's what it is. It's whether monetarily or legally, they are just constant niggling. And that said, we've come to the end of this week's episode of African News Review. Again, I must thank my panelists, Comrade Milton Allimadi, Sister Fubara and Eneli Esquire. And any final thoughts from you, starting with the comrade?
A luta continua. Samara Machel used to like saying, the struggle continues, victory is certain.
Yes. And Sister?
I like what the minister from Burkina Faso said. What did he say? Motherland or death?
Yes. Motherland or death. Yes.
Motherland or death. Let's do this.
Yes. And that said, like Sankara would say, he who feeds you controls you. So try and feed yourself. Until next week, it's good night and